Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is part 12 of the Forbidden Project, where I try to bring an old Ducati GTV back to life. In this video I'll be taking care of the front and rear fenders and the seating bracket. But first, here's a little cut of what I've already done. So first up is the seating bracket. This seating bracket has seen better days, and I'm planning to fix it up so it looks good again. It has 4 holes where it bolts to the frame and another 4 holes where a seat is just put into it with some studs. First off, to prepare the material, I'm just sanding off the spaces where I will work with the fiberglass. It's the first time I'm working with this material, and I've simply bought a fiberglass repair kit for it, so I'm going to struggle a little bit. For some of the holes I've found some metal bushings that have the right sizes, so I'm just putting that in and fiberglassing around it to keep the shape. But for the holes that bolt to the frame, I seal one side with aluminum tape, and then I'm just filling in the entire hole with fiberglass material, and then I'm drilling new holes into that. This is the first rough state of how everything looks, with the holes filled in and the other holes a bit repaired. I've also sanded the outside paint of the piece and tried to get rid of all the old paint marks and try to get everything flat. You can see that there's a lot of body filler on this thing already, and this is something that was there from the factory, and the factory molds of this piece just weren't very good. There's a lot of little pinholes or even bigger holes that are from bubbles that came from taking this thing out of the mold and piecing it together, and no matter how much I work on it, I just can't seem to get rid of those. It's really annoying because some of those go really deep, so if I try to fiberglass them, the resin doesn't really penetrate, and when I sand them again they just show up immediately again. It's quite a frustrating piece of work, this thing, so at this point I'm still trying my best to just fix it and get everything perfect. So here you can see my issues after filling it, priming it and thinking it would be okay, and then just seeing a terrible result. So in the end I gave up on making it perfect, and I chose to go with the paint job that would just make the entire part look very used and abused, but still, in my opinion, would look kind of cool. And that's the look that I chose for the entire bike. Originally I was gonna make it really clean, but that just does not seem an option. Maybe with better skills I could improve on that. Next up is the fenders. You can see me putting the front fender here into citric acid to remove all the rust. Before that I've used some paint stripper and stripped off as much of the paint that I could easily. There's still some leftovers which I go over later, but the citric acid really gets rid of rust quite well. After putting it in warm acid, then I just neutralized the acid with some baking soda, then I cleaned the part and removed all of the leftover paint, and then I just put some corrosion protective primer on it. You can see me here doing that in the garden, and before I'm painting this I'm heating it up a little with a gas torch. I'm not using too much heat on it, but I use this because the day I tried to paint this was a bit too cold for it, so I tried to just warm everything up so the paint would stick better to it and would dry properly. It worked quite well. It's not something that you should normally do, but I'm not a professional and I think it turned out alright in the end. After priming the front fender, I repeat the exact same steps for the rear fender, so both of them are in the same state. And then I did my used look paint job on them. I don't have any footage on it, but I basically used some different colors of paint and just scratched them into different layers so it looked like they were just sanded over and over again. I got some scratches through underlying coats of paint, and that's the look that I went with. Here you can see I painted the insides of both fenders black. It didn't really make sense to repeat the paint job on this side because no one's going to see it. And then afterwards I used some 2-component clear coat that's UV resistant just to protect the surface of the paint job. Even though it's used look, I still wanted to protect it from corrosion that can happen in the future. While I was painting the fenders, I also painted the seating bracket as well. It also gets a coat of UV resistant clear coat on it, just to protect it from some impacts. I know that the fiberglass technically doesn't really need any protection, but I feel like everything should have the same amount of shine and should have a little layer of protective paint on it. To mount the seating bracket, I have some rubber grommets that have metal bushings where the seating bracket is screwed onto the frame. Unfortunately, I need to widen the holes a little bit for everything to fit perfectly, which you see me do here. Since this is fiberglass, I try to immediately vacuum the dust that happens when I'm grinding into it away, because it's hazardous. I then put in the grommets and check their fitment and put the bushings into the grommet. The rear fender also gets some rubber grommets. 4 of them are for mounting, and that's rubber grommets that have some metal bushings in them as well. And then there's 2 bigger rubber grommets where the wiring goes through the metal and then runs inside of the fender and then comes out of it again to attach to the rear light. Here I'm checking the fitment on the old rubber grommets because they are still in a decent usable state, and I'm making sure that the wiring will fit through them. Since the new rubber grommets that I have for this are a bit bigger, they don't fit as snugly as the old ones, and I decide to just reuse the old ones because they are still fine and they're still usable. To fit the rear fender to the bike, I need to loosen up the top bolts of the rear shocks because they stand out past the lock nut a little bit too much. I then position the rear fender so that the bolts I have will go through the brackets on the frame for it, and I screw everything into place. With the fender mounted on both brackets, I now feed the wiring through both of the rubber grommets and make sure that it is properly secured on the inside of the fender. You can't really see me do that, but there's some little brackets that can bend around the wiring on the inside of the fender that hold it into place. With the wiring loom now in place, I connect it to the rear light. This is so I know how much wiring space I need, and the rear light still needs to be mounted and it will be in a different spot than the original light, so I need to know how much space for the wires I need. I then put on the rear seat bracket and attach it to the frame. This also helps to position the rear light for mounting it later on. After attaching the fender and the seating bracket, I retighten all the bolts, and then I drill 2 holes to mount the rear lights, which I then protect with some corrosion protective paint that I brush on here. Since the whole fender is used look, I don't really mind making a bit of a mess out of it, and then afterwards I mount the rear light to the fender. I'm not 100% sure about the look that the rear light gives the bike, but for now this rear light is something that I just had lying around and I didn't have to buy new, so for the moment it's going to stay this way. If I can't stand the look of it in the future, I might just go and change it to something else at that point, but for now I'm just happy with having put everything that I have together. If you're wondering about the front fender, I forgot to record that part, but it's basically just 4 screws and it attaches and that's it. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little update to the project, and I hope to see you again in another video. Goodbye and have a good time.